The movie opens in New York at a skyscraper called the Millennium Building, which has 100 floors and 73 elevators. On the observation deck, guards Andy and Gary are using the telescope to spy on a neighbor who is having quite a raucous party. When it starts to rain, the guards head back inside just before a lightning strike causes a brief power outage. While Andy goes to the bathroom, Gary notices that his watch is acting strangely just as the elevator doors open. As the thunder continues to rumble outside, Gary struggles with the elevator doors because they refuse to stay open. Suddenly, Gary's flashlight turns on by itself, and when he tries to turn it off, the doors of the elevator tremble along with his hand. At that moment, the doors close, and Andy hears Gary scream, so he rushes back. He finds Gary holding a destroyed flashlight and blaming the elevator, which he is now afraid of. Andy finds this ridiculous and forces him to go along. The next day, a group of pregnant women finishes their yoga class and enters the elevator. They notice it is descending faster than normal when suddenly the box flickers and stops. The guards hear the alarm and note that it's the third time this week this has happened, but they never find anything wrong with the elevator. In just a moment, the alarm shuts off, and the guards assume the elevator is functioning again, so they don't call for maintenance. However, the elevator is still stuck, and when the women try to press the emergency buttons or use the emergency phone, nothing happens. Their own phones also have no signal, so the women have to wait. Eventually, the guards receive a call from another tenant saying that the elevator is not working, which surprises them because their computer lights are normal. In the elevator, the women are starting to lose patience because it is getting very hot and hard to breathe. When maintenance finally arrives, the guards cut the power so the technicians can force the door open, but the key doesn't work either. Meanwhile, the women accidentally trigger a very loud alarm, and at least 2 of them start having contractions. Within minutes, all the women are experiencing contractions, and one even starts to give birth. The maintenance team announces that the doors are stuck, so a guard appears with an axe, desperate to help because one of the women is his wife. A technician thinks this is too dangerous and tries to stop him, leading to a fight on the floor. At that moment, the elevator starts descending very rapidly, even with the power still off. When the elevator reaches the lobby, the guards rush to open it and are shocked to find real babies inside. Meanwhile, technicians Jeff and Mark stop at a diner for breakfast, and Mark draws the attention of a rude man in the establishment for being rude to the waitress. The man responds by punching Mark, throwing him against a table before leaving. Their breakfast is interrupted when they receive a call from their boss asking them to go to the Millennium Building to fix the elevator. At the same time, reporter Jennifer is sent to the Millennium Building to cover the incident with the pregnant women who are now being taken away in ambulances. Jennifer tries to ask the mothers a few questions, but the police forbid it. When Mark and Jeff arrive, they are informed about the elevator problems, and manager Milligan wants them fixed quickly because he is afraid of being sued. Mark and Jeff are then taken to the machine room on the roof. While the duo checks the engine, they talk about a mechanic who recently committed suicide, which is strange because he seemed very happy. His colleague thinks the engine may have been struck by lightning, but Jeff considers the idea ridiculous. A few hours later, the duo finishes checking everything but finds nothing wrong, so they just leave. Meanwhile, a blind man is in a hair salon who secretly gave him green hair. It turns out he uses blindness as an excuse to be very touchy with her, so that was her revenge. When he and his guide dog enter the elevator, he chooses to go down, but the elevator starts going up. It doesn't stop until the 91st floor, which is still under construction and currently empty, meaning no one could have called it. The man presses a bunch of buttons, but the elevator doesn't work, so they exit. The doors close immediately, and the elevator descends without them. The man requests another elevator, which makes the dog growl. The elevator rises quickly, and when the screen announces the 91st floor, the doors open, but there's no box. The dog barks to warn his owner, who steps forward and falls. He manages to hold onto the edge, and the dog tries to pull him back, but the weight is too much, and they both end up falling down the shaft. Later that night, on the 44th floor, Andy and Gary are stealing some whiskey when they receive a call from the security camera staff. They explain that an elevator is rising rapidly, but there shouldn't be anyone in the building at this hour. Eventually, the elevator stops and the doors open, but no one exits. Gary and Andy try to check, but Gary accidentally bumps into a statue, and the noise causes the elevator to close its doors and leave. The duo rushes down and finds the elevator open again on the 40th floor, but it closes as soon as they approach. The small display announces that it's returning to the 44th floor, but when Gary's flashlight starts to fail, the doors open, even though there's no box behind them. He takes a look inside and finds the body of a dead dog hanging from a metal beam. At that moment, the doors close, trapping Andy by the neck. Gary tries to help him, but the doors are stuck. Suddenly, the elevator box begins to descend and pushes Andy down until he is decapitated. The next day, the Millennium Building shuts down all the elevators, leaving hundreds of tourists trapped outside. The press is not allowed inside, and the police refuse to share any information. Milligan has a meeting with the assigned detective, who explains that they checked the security cameras but cannot find any intruders in the building. Mark and Jeff are called to check the elevators again, but Mark is suffering from a hangover and rushes to the bathroom to vomit. Suddenly, he is found by Jennifer, who is pretending to be a cleaning staff member, but Mark can tell she's a reporter. She takes a picture of him and asks questions, but Mark refuses to respond. When he leaves the bathroom, Jennifer tries to follow him, only for the guards to expel her. Afterward, Mark and Jeff report to Milligan, saying they found nothing with the detective's support. Milligan announces that they will reopen the elevators the next day. When Mark goes to work, all his friends mock him because of something on the news. A confused Mark is called to his boss's office, who is furious because the newspaper published the photo of Mark with a sensational headline. Jennifer quoted a sarcastic comment Mark made about elevators, and now the police consider him a suspect too. Mark is also shocked to learn that he has been assigned a new partner. When he looks out the window, he sees Jeff arguing with a scientist named Gunter. Mark asks his new partner about the mechanic who committed suicide and discovers he used to be Jeff's partner in the city. Two friends are skating around, not caring about bumping into other people or cars. Eventually, they reach the Millennium Building parking lot, where one of the skaters is accidentally hit by a vehicle, while the other continues forward. As the fallen man checks his injuries, the car cleaners start to move, and an elevator opens, sucking the man inside and moments later ejecting him on the 86th floor. The body flies through the room, breaks a window, and passes over the fence to then fall from the building and die upon hitting the ground. Upon seeing the incident on the news, Mark rushes to the Millennium Building, but he is not allowed to enter. On the way back, he sees Jennifer among the other reporters and follows her until she apologizes for her article. She shares some details about the incident, explaining that the police think the guy jumped to commit suicide, but she believes there may have been some foul play. In the lobby, a little girl manages to escape from daycare and sits down to play in front of the elevators. Suddenly, an elevator door opens, and as the girl approaches, it closes, and a different elevator opens next. This continues for a while, and the girl has a great time running from one door to another. When the middle elevator finally opens, the box rises a few inches to leave a gap underneath, and the girl looks inside. At that moment, the daycare teacher and Milligan hear her scream, so they run to the lobby to check. Thankfully, the girl is okay, but her doll is destroyed. When Milligan looks at the elevator, he finds a doll's arm stuck in the door. That night, Mark studies the elevator schematics at home when he hears a noise outside and notices a shadow behind the door. He grabs a bat and opens the door, only to find Jennifer, who brought a video for him to watch. It's a security recording showing the entire incident with the skater, and Mark thinks this proves the guy committed suicide. However, Jennifer rewinds the tape to show that, in the records, the elevator took only 2 seconds to go from the parking lot to the 86th floor, which should be impossible. Mark finally agrees that something strange is happening and takes Jennifer along to visit Jeff, who hasn't been answering his phone. Jennifer asks him to watch the tape, only for Jeff to panic and yell at them before leaving in his car. This isn't normal behavior, and when Jeff's wife comes out, she confirms that Jeff hasn't been himself lately. Jennifer and Mark leave and decide to have dinner together, during which Jennifer admits that she thinks the elevator is haunted. After dinner, they go to Jennifer's office and use her computer to research information about Gunter, since he is the one who designs the elevators for the company he worked at, Codal Industries, which was shut down after an investigation involving bribery and illegal use of government money. Another article reveals that the company worked for the military, manufacturing weapons. At this moment, Jennifer's coworker, Chip, passes by and notices the article they are reading, then shares what he knows. Codal got into trouble for making biochips, which are computer chips based on living tissue. They built a computer with dolphin brains that developed a mind of their own, and the chips became capable of reproducing, causing the computer to grow and behave like a living organism. However, no one knows what happened to it. Chip has never heard the name Gunter, but he agrees to help them look for information. On the way home, Jennifer tells Mark that she believes the elevator is haunted. The next day, Milligan steps into the elevator, and some drops of blood fall on his shoulder. When he looks up, he finds the hatch open. Suddenly, the elevator stops, and Jeff's body falls through the opening. A terrified Milligan crawls out, but soon more employees see the body too. Mark receives a call with the terrible news. Then he and Jennifer rush to the press conference to get more details. To the shock of the duo, Gunter is sitting at the table with Milligan, the detective, and Mark's boss. The detective explains that Jeff was a suspect, and now they are sure he was involved in all the incidents. He also states that the police received a note from the killer. Mark can tell he is lying, but when Jennifer tries to ask Gunter about the biochips, he interrupts her because he thinks knowing this would make them look like suspects too. The duo leaves the building, and Mark theorizes that the police are helping Milligan cover it all up. He also tells Jennifer about Jeff's former partner, saying he is starting to think the suicide story was a lie. They go to Jeff's house to look for clues, but the police have already cleared everything out. Jeff's wife points out that he died the same way as his partner, which confirms that the suicide story was a lie. Next, Jennifer and Mark visit the widow of the partner, but she doesn't open the door, so Jennifer breaks the lock. When the duo enters, they find a creepy altar dedicated to the dead guy. The widow finally agrees to talk and explains that her husband was killed when they left him bleeding inside the building for 3 days. She believes his spirit is still out there and will only find peace when he gets his revenge on the Millennium Building. A large group of people enters the elevator, which starts to rise very quickly and does not stop at any floor. The tenants scream, and soon everyone starts crying or screaming in panic. Suddenly, the floor opens, and a bunch of people falls freely. Some manage to hold on, but the elevator is going too fast, and one by one, they begin to fall as well. The elevator never stops and eventually explodes through the ceiling, destroying half the machine room. This time, the incident reaches the White House, and the president appears at a press conference, saying that all the deaths in the elevator were an act of terrorism. At the same time, the head of the elevator company meets with Gunter and tells him that since he created this monster, it is now his responsibility to eliminate it. Back at the Millennium Building, the police are arriving with more men than usual as part of an official operation. Jennifer arrives driving Jeff's van, while Mark hides in the back. She pretends to be a company employee delivering elevator materials related to the investigation, but the police still want to search the van. At that moment, she receives a call from Chip, who tells her that the biochips are still a work in progress and are now using humans instead of animals. The police tire of Jennifer stalling and force her to hang up before taking her to an interrogation room. Meanwhile, Mark sneaks out of the van unnoticed and enters the building, hiding underneath a police truck, while the officers continue to bring in boxes of ammunition and explosives. Mark carefully creeps around and uses his master key to open a service elevator, jumping onto the box just before the police use it to reach the top floor. Once the way is clear, Mark runs up the stairs to the roof and avoids some police officers before entering the machine room. There, he uses his key again to activate one of the main elevators, which is seen by the guards on the main computer. After grabbing a light bulb, Mark returns to the top floor and rushes into the main elevator just in time for the police to see him. At first, he doesn't move, but when Mark touches the hatch, the elevator immediately starts descending rapidly. Using the buttons does nothing, so Mark forces a short circuit in the elevator to finally make it stop. Then, Mark climbs on top of the elevator box and uses the buttons there to control it. He rises a few floors and makes the elevator stop when he notices a mysterious message on the wall written in blood. Mark checks inside a hole and gets startled when a bird comes out, but there's nothing else. Then he starts to rise again with the elevator. A few floors later, he finds a strange white substance in another hole and sparks in the cables above. When he tries to rise even higher, the police arrive at the machine room and disable the elevator. Now Mark has no choice but to climb using the cables. He discovers a compartment in the wall and forces it open, causing the box in the machine room to shake and spark as well. Inside the compartment, he discovers the large glowing biochip and does not hesitate to stab it several times. At the same time, the elevator box in the machine room catches fire and begins to descend. The biochip still isn't dead, so Mark keeps stabbing. The police use explosives to blow the elevator door open and start to enter, intending to capture Mark. The burning elevator box is approaching, so Mark moves out of the way to avoid death. Most of the officers quickly head out, but one stumbles, leaving his legs hanging over the edges, and the elevator crushes his body in its descent. Mark prepares to escape, but a second elevator rises and some cables wrap around his legs, dragging him. Using all his strength, Mark manages to untangle the cables and jumps just in time for the elevator to slam against the wreckage in the machine room. Debris starts falling, and Mark has to hide under a beam to survive. Meanwhile, Gunter arrives at the building and is allowed in because he has a special pass. The operation leader recognizes him on the camera and realizes this is not related to terrorists. Meanwhile, Jennifer sneaks into ducts to escape the interrogation room. Mark exits the elevator and steals a gun from the police boxes. He then goes to the 65th floor and opens the elevator door to find the biochip again. He prepares to shoot, only for Gunter to appear next to him with a gun. Mark quickly disarms Gunter and a struggle ensues, during which Gunter tries to kick Mark down the elevator shaft. Gunter almost wins the fight, but Jennifer interrupts him, taking the gun and forcing Gunter to surrender. Mark uses the opportunity to grab the police officer's gun again, but Gunter holds the door to protect his precious creation. At that moment, the police arrive, and Gunter uses the distraction to capture Jennifer as a hostage. She bites his hand to free herself, and as soon as Gunter is alone, the elevator cables begin to move like tentacles to grab him and drag him to his death. Mark's leg ends up tangled in the process, so Jennifer throws him the gun and he uses it to finally destroy the biochip. The explosion sends Mark back into the hallway and the cables release Gunter's body. Sometime later, Jennifer goes to pick up Mark from the hospital. When he finally recovers, they enter the elevator and are startled when it stops, but it was Mark accidentally pressing the emergency button. Then he and Jennifer share a kiss.